Welcome to Martha Family Secrets. My name is Clara Bennett. I am 27 years old. And last Friday night, my parents invited me home for dinner, then locked the door, sat me down in front of a marriage contract with a man I had never met in my life, and said, "This is happening tonight." There was an officiant in the corner of the living room holding a leather folder in his lap. My father stood blocking the only way out. My mother looked at me the way you look at a problem you have already solved. Calm, certain, finished. And you know what, she was right that everything had already been decided. Just not the way she thought. Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. Now let me take you back 2 weeks, to the day it all started. Not the dinner, but the phone call from Aunt Ruth. And before I get there, let me tell you who I am. Or who I was, really, because those feel like two very different people now. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment 20 minutes outside Millhaven, Georgia. I work as an administrative assistant at a veterinary clinic. I pay my rent on time. I don't drink, don't smoke, don't stay out past 10 unless I am binge watching something on the couch with my cat, a fluffy gray disaster named Button who knocks things off shelves for entertainment and absolutely knows what he is doing. By every measure that matters to me, my life is quiet and fine. But to my mother, Patricia Bennett, quiet and fine is just another way of saying failure with better lighting. She calls at least 3 times a week. Not to ask how I am doing, to check. Where was I Saturday? Who was I with? Why haven't I put myself out there more? And always, 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 the same closing line delivered with a sigh that could flatten a building. You are 27 and still alone, Clara. Do you know what people are saying about that? I stopped answering most of the time. That made it worse. Last Thanksgiving I drove the 45 minutes home because she guilt-tripped me for 3 straight days, and I walked through that front door and before I could even set the pie I brought down on the counter, she turned to my uncle's wife and said, "This is Clara, still single, still working at that little dog clinic." She actually laughed when she said it, like it was a joke everyone in the room had already been in on for years. My father Howard sat at the head of the table and said nothing. He never does. He just gave this slow, heavy nod, like he agreed with every word but couldn't be bothered to speak them himself. And his silence has always been so much louder than her voice. I was 24 the first time the thought arrived, quiet and clear, sitting in the car after another family dinner where I had smiled and been gracious and driven home feeling like something had been taken from me. Maybe loving your parents doesn't mean you have to survive everything they do to you. That year I started keeping a notebook. I didn't know why yet. 2 Thursdays ago, I was at the clinic restocking the supply cabinet, humming something to myself, having a perfectly normal afternoon, when my phone buzzed on the shelf beside me. Aunt Ruth. She never calls during work hours. I stepped outside, leaned against the brick wall by the side entrance, and answered. Clara. Her voice was shaking. Not the dramatic kind. The kind that comes from someone trying very, very hard to hold themselves together. I need you to listen to me and not say anything until I am done. I didn't say anything. Your mother called me this afternoon. She was excited, bragging really. She said tomorrow night, Friday, they are having a dinner at the house. She said they are going to take care of the Clara situation. There is a man. His name is Vince Holbrook. He is 38. There is an officiant coming. And there is a contract. I said her name 3 times before I believed her. Ruth. 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 What do you mean a contract? A marriage contract, baby. Pre-signed by your mother and your father. She told me Vince's family owns land out past Route 12 and your daddy owes them money. She wanted me to come and witness her niece finally doing the right thing. Aunt Ruth paused, and her voice broke just slightly at the edges. I told her I was busy. But I am not letting you walk into that house blind. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time after we hung up. My hands sat on the steering wheel and they were not shaking from fear exactly. They were shaking from the feeling of something clicking into place. All those years of phone calls and guilt and enforced silence suddenly making a shape I could actually see from the outside. A real shape, with edges and corners and a name. Aunt Ruth said one more thing before she hung up. Quiet and steady, like she had been saving it. You don't owe them your life, Clara. I had 24 hours. And this time I was not going to be good. On the drive home that night, I ran every possible scenario through my head. If I didn't show up, my mother would call every relative within 50 miles and tell them I had abandoned the family in its hour of need. She would tell the women at her walking group I was unstable, difficult, impossible. She would reshape the story until I was the villain. And in Millhaven, once you are the villain you stay the villain. Small towns have long memories and very short attention spans for context. If I showed up and refused, my father would block the door. I knew this because he had done it before. Not for a wedding, but 3 years ago when I packed a bag and told them I was moving out. He stood in the doorway with his arms crossed and said 5 words. You walk out, don't come back. I walked anyway, but that night there had been no officiant, no stranger in a vest, no contract with my name typed into every single blank. If I showed up and said yes, I would lose everything I had spent 3 years building. The apartment, the job, the quiet life I had stitched together stitch by careful stitch. I pulled into my parking spot and sat in the dark for a while. The engine ticked down. A neighbor's television flickered blue through their curtains. And then I remembered something. The notebook. 3 years of entries. Dates, times, exact words. Every phone call where my mother told me I was embarrassing the family. Every text from my father that was just a single period, his way of saying he was disappointed without spelling it out. Screenshots of voicemails I had kept because I was afraid I was losing my mind and needed proof for myself that what I felt was actually real. I didn't know it yet. But that notebook was about to become something else entirely. I pulled it from my nightstand drawer. Navy blue cover, dog-eared corners, 3 years of my mother's voice pressed flat between the pages like dried flowers, except nothing about them was beautiful. I flipped through over 200 entries. October 14th, 2 years ago. Mom called at 11 at night and said if I didn't come home for Christmas, she would tell Grandma I was living with a man. I live alone. March 3rd last year. Dad texted, your mother cried all night. No context. I called back. He hung up after 10 seconds. July 19th. Mom told Aunt Patrice I had been fired from the clinic. I hadn't. She just doesn't consider it a real job. The front door was unlocked. That should have been my first clue. My mother never left the door unlocked. Not ever. I stepped inside and the living room stopped me cold. White tablecloth over the dining table. Fresh flowers in a vase I had never seen before. Candles, actual candles, lit along the mantel in a row. The room smelled like gardenias and furniture polish, the specific combination my mother only produced when she wanted to impress someone who hadn't been here before. This was not a family dinner. A man stood up from the couch. Tall, dark sport coat over a pressed shirt, clean-shaven, somewhere around 38. He looked at me and gave a single nod, slow and measured, like we had already reached an agreement on something. I had never seen him in my life. In the corner near the bookshelf sat a second man, older, maybe early 60s, holding a leather folder in his lap. Gray suit that didn't quite fit at the shoulders. He smiled at me the way people smile at nervous brides. Aunt Ruth had described every detail. The man on the couch, the officiant in the corner, even where they would be sitting. My mother appeared from the kitchen wiping her hands on a dish towel, beaming like a woman who had planned a perfect party and everything had arrived exactly on schedule. There she is. Come in, sweetheart. Everyone has been waiting. She said it like I was late to my own birthday celebration. I looked at the couch, at the officiant, at the white tablecloth and the candles and the flowers. I looked at the empty chair they had set out for me, directly across from the man I had never met, with a pen placed neatly beside an empty plate. No dinner. No food at all. Just a stage. And then I heard the deadbolt click behind me. I turned around. My father was standing at the front door, arms crossed, back flat against the frame. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Before I could sit, my mother slid a stack of papers across the table toward me. 6 pages stapled in the corner with blue ink. I looked down at the header. Marital Agreement and Covenant of Union. Page 3 had 2 signatures already at the bottom. Howard T. Bennett. Patricia M. Bennett. Under a line that read parental consent and endorsement. My name was typed into every single blank on every page. Clara Marie Bennett, printed neatly, like a form letter. Like I was a box someone had already checked. What is this? My mother folded her hands on the table. Your future. Who signed this section? Your father and I. Because you won't do it yourself. I have never met this person. You are meeting him right now. Sit down. The man from the couch stepped forward and extended his hand. I didn't take it. I'm Vince Holbrook, he said. His voice was flat. Not nervous, not warm. Transactional, like he was closing on a piece of real estate. I think you will find the terms very reasonable. I looked at the officiant in the corner. He shifted the leather folder in his lap and looked everywhere except directly at me. I looked back down at the contract. Something in the language caught my eye, a clause I almost skimmed past. I held it. I didn't react. Not yet. Vince's family has been very patient, my mother said, touching my arm. Very generous. Vince checked his watch. And that was the moment I understood something I hadn't fully grasped until right then. He was not here because he wanted a wife. He was here because he was collecting on a debt, and I was the payment. I looked at the pen beside my plate. I looked at the blank signature line with my name typed beneath it. I didn't pick it up. I set the contract down. Stood up slowly. The chair legs scraped the floor. I am not signing this. My mother's smile didn't move. You haven't finished reading it. I don't need to finish reading it. I don't agree to any of this. I turned toward the front door. 2 steps. 3. My father was already there. Same posture as 3 years ago. Back flat against the door. Arms folded across his chest. Chin down. A wall made of flannel and silence. I stopped 2 feet from him. Close enough to smell the motor oil that never quite washes out of his hands no matter how long he scrubs. Move, Dad. Nothing. Dad, move. His eyes flicked over my shoulder toward my mother, then came back to me. He didn't unfold his arms, didn't shift his weight. Just stood there, solid, the way he had stood in every doorway of every decision I had ever tried to make. Behind me, my mother's voice. You are not going anywhere tonight, Clara. The officiant coughed quietly. Vince sat back down on the couch and crossed one leg over the other like a man who had all the time in the world and intended to use it. 3 years ago, this exact scene had made me cry. Dad in the doorway, my mother narrating my failure from behind. Me caught in the middle with nowhere to go. I had cried and I had pushed past him and I had left and not come back for 8 months. But tonight there was a contract on the table. An officiant with a folder. A stranger who had driven here to marry a woman he had never spoken to before today. Tonight was different. I breathed in, turned around, walked back to the table, and sat down. Not because I had given up. My mother's eyes lit up the moment she saw me take my seat. She thought she had one. She hadn't. She sat across from me and reached for my hands. I let her take them. It took everything I had not to pull away. Clara. Her voice softened into that tone I had known since I was 12 years old. The tone she used when I didn't make the volleyball team. The tone she used when she told me my childhood dog had to be put down. The sympathy voice. The weapon she had been sharpening for 27 years. I carried you for 9 months. I raised you. I gave up everything. My figure, my social life, my career, all of it for you. 27 years, Clara. And all I am asking, the one thing I have ever asked of you, is that you let me hold my head up in this town. A tear slid down her cheek. Right on cue. The front door was unlocked. That should have been my first clue. My mother never left the door unlocked. Not ever. I stepped inside and the living room stopped me cold. White tablecloth over the dining table. Fresh flowers in a vase I had never seen before. Candles, actual candles, lit along the mantel in a row. The room smelled like gardenias and furniture polish, the specific combination my mother only produced when she wanted to impress someone who hadn't been here before. This was not a family dinner. A man stood up from the couch. Tall, dark sport coat over a pressed shirt, clean-shaven, somewhere around 38. He looked at me and gave a single nod, slow and measured, like we had already reached an agreement on something. I had never seen him in my life. In the corner near the bookshelf sat a second man, older, maybe early 60s, holding a leather folder in his lap. Gray suit that didn't quite fit at the shoulders. He smiled at me the way people smile at nervous brides. Aunt Ruth had described every detail. The man on the couch, the officiant in the corner, even where they would be sitting. My mother appeared from the kitchen wiping her hands on a dish towel, beaming like a woman who had planned a perfect party and everything had arrived exactly on schedule. There she is. Come in, sweetheart. Everyone has been waiting. She said it like I was late to my own birthday celebration. I looked at the couch, at the officiant, at the white tablecloth and the candles and the flowers. I looked at the empty chair they had set out for me, directly across from the man I had never met, with a pen placed neatly beside an empty plate. No dinner. No food at all. Just a stage. And then I heard the deadbolt click behind me. I turned around. My father was standing at the front door, arms crossed, back flat against the frame. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Before I could sit, my mother slid a stack of papers across the table toward me. 6 pages stapled in the corner with blue ink. I looked down at the header. Marital Agreement and Covenant of Union. Page 3 had 2 signatures already at the bottom. Howard T. Bennett. Patricia M. Bennett. Under a line that read parental consent and endorsement. My name was typed into every single blank on every page. Clara Marie Bennett, printed neatly, like a form letter. Like I was a box someone had already checked. What is this? My mother folded her hands on the table. Your future. Who signed this section? Your father and I. Because you won't do it yourself. I have never met this person. You are meeting him right now. Sit down. The man from the couch stepped forward and extended his hand. I didn't take it. I'm Vince Holbrook, he said. His voice was flat. Not nervous, not warm. Transactional, like he was closing on a piece of real estate. I think you will find the terms very reasonable. I looked at the officiant in the corner. He shifted the leather folder in his lap and looked everywhere except directly at me. I looked back down at the contract. Something in the language caught my eye, a clause I almost skimmed past. I held it. I didn't react. Not yet. Vince's family has been very patient, my mother said, touching my arm. Very generous. Vince checked his watch. And that was the moment I understood something I hadn't fully grasped until right then. He was not here because he wanted a wife. He was here because he was collecting on a debt, and I was the payment. I looked at the pen beside my plate. I looked at the blank signature line with my name typed beneath it. I didn't pick it up. I set the contract down. Stood up slowly. The chair legs scraped the floor. I am not signing this. My mother's smile didn't move. You haven't finished reading it. I don't need to finish reading it. I don't agree to any of this. I turned toward the front door. 2 steps. 3. My father was already there. Same posture as 3 years ago. Back flat against the door. Arms folded across his chest. Chin down. A wall made of flannel and silence. I stopped 2 feet from him. Close enough to smell the motor oil that never quite washes out of his hands no matter how long he scrubs. Move, Dad. Nothing. Dad, move. His eyes flicked over my shoulder toward my mother, then came back to me. He didn't unfold his arms, didn't shift his weight. Just stood there, solid, the way he had stood in every doorway of every decision I had ever tried to make. Behind me, my mother's voice. You are not going anywhere tonight, Clara. The officiant coughed quietly. Vince sat back down on the couch and crossed one leg over the other like a man who had all the time in the world and intended to use it. 3 years ago, this exact scene had made me cry. Dad in the doorway, my mother narrating my failure from behind. Me caught in the middle with nowhere to go. I had cried and I had pushed past him and I had left and not come back for 8 months. But tonight there was a contract on the table. An officiant with a folder. A stranger who had driven here to marry a woman he had never spoken to before today. Tonight was different. I breathed in, turned around, walked back to the table, and sat down. Not because I had given up. My mother's eyes lit up the moment she saw me take my seat. She thought she had one. She hadn't. She sat across from me and reached for my hands. I let her take them. It took everything I had not to pull away. Clara. Her voice softened into that tone I had known since I was 12 years old. The tone she used when I didn't make the volleyball team. The tone she used when she told me my childhood dog had to be put down. The sympathy voice. The weapon she had been sharpening for 27 years. I carried you for 9 months. I raised you. I gave up everything. My figure, my social life, my career, all of it for you. 27 years, Clara. And all I am asking, the one thing I have ever asked of you, is that you let me hold my head up in this town. A tear slid down her cheek. Right on cue. I picked up the contract again. Slowly, page by page, making no rush of it. My mother sat up straight because she thought I was coming around. I turned to page 2, section 3. Assets of the bride. I looked up. Someone in this room listed my personal savings account balance. $7,412. I have never shared that number with anyone here. Silence like a dropped glass. Page 4, section 7. Marital residence. The Holbrook property on Route 12. No alternative listed. No option for independent housing. Vince uncrossed his legs. Page 5, section 9. I read it slowly, making absolutely sure every word landed where I meant it to land. The bride agrees to relinquish independent employment within 60 days of the marriage date. I set the page down. You want me to quit my job? My mother's face was a mask. Vince's family doesn't need you working. This has nothing to do with what Vince's family needs. This is about taking away my income so that I cannot leave. I looked at Ray. His leather folder was closed now, his hands folded on top of it. He was watching me the way you watch something you cannot look away from even though part of you knows you probably should. I turned to Vince. Did you write this, or did my mother? His jaw tightened. The terms are standard. Standard for what exactly? No answer. I turned to my mother. You listed my bank balance. You negotiated my residence. And you wrote a clause designed to eliminate my ability to earn money. And you signed it before I even knew this document existed. I set the contract down on the center of the table, square and flat, like an exhibit. This is not a marriage, Mom. This is a sale. The word sat between us like a lit match. I turned to my father. He hadn't moved from the door. Hadn't spoken more than 4 words all night. Dad. How much do you owe the Holbrooks? His chin lifted just slightly. That is none of your business. It is directly my business because I am how you are planning to pay it off. The room went completely still. Even the candles seemed to stop flickering for a moment. Vince looked at Howard. Howard looked at the floor. My mother's hand came down flat on the table. Don't you dare accuse your father. $40,000. I said it evenly. Aunt Ruth told me. A land loan that went sideways last spring. And instead of selling something or working out a payment plan, you decided to sell me. Howard's arms dropped to his sides for the first time all night. Vince stood up from the couch. I don't think that is an accurate characterization. Then correct me. He didn't. Ray rose from his chair, both hands gripping the folder against his chest. I think I need to reassess the situation here. Sit down. My mother's voice broke high and sharp, the kind of sound that carries through walls. I paid you. You are going to. Ma'am. Ray held up one hand. If this is not a voluntary union, I cannot proceed. I will not proceed. He moved toward the door. But Howard was still there, no longer blocking it with intention, but blocking it with habit, with size, with the inertia of a man who did not know how to step out of the way. Nobody is leaving yet, Howard said. Not loud. Almost tired. Ray stopped. Looked at the door. Looked at Howard. Looked at me. And I watched it register on his face, the realization that he too was now trapped inside this house. My mother hissed under her breath. I will deal with Aunt Ruth. Ray took one more step forward. Mr. Bennett, I need to leave. When it is done. It is done. I am not performing this ceremony. Howard didn't move. He filled that doorway the way he always had. Not with rage, but with mass. A man who believed that standing still was the same as being right. I looked at the scene from somewhere outside myself for a moment. For adults in a living room with a man blocking the only exit in a house on a quiet street on a Friday night. If you drove past, you would see a porch light on. You would hear nothing. That is how it works in Millhaven. Everything ugly happens behind drawn curtains. My mother's voice changed again, soft and wounded, the victim register she could switch to without a single second of warm-up. Clara, look what you are doing. You are embarrassing us in front of Mr. Dutton. In front of Vince. Is this who you are? I almost laughed out loud. She was worried about embarrassment in the middle of an ambush. Ah, of course she was. A car pulled into the driveway next door. Headlights swept across the living room curtains. My mother's head snapped toward the window. Close the blinds, Howard. He crossed the room and pulled the cord. The blinds clattered shut. Then he returned to the door. I checked the microwave clock again. 7:48. Dad. I said it clearly. You are physically preventing 4 people from leaving this house. Do you know what that is called? He didn't answer. It is called unlawful restraint. In Georgia, it is a misdemeanor. Unless it involves a threat of physical harm, in which case it becomes a felony. Howard's hands, hanging at his sides now, curled into fists. Not to hit anyone. I know my father. It was the only way he knew how to hold himself together when the ground shifted under him. From somewhere outside, very faint, I thought I heard a siren. I wasn't sure yet. I set the contract down on the table, centered it neatly between the flowers and the empty place setting. Then I stood up and the chair barely made a sound. I looked at my mother. I looked at my father. I looked at Vince Holbrook, who had driven 40 minutes to purchase a woman with somebody else's debt. And I smiled. Not a smirk, not a performance. The kind of smile that comes when every piece settles into its exact right place and you can finally see the whole board laid out in front of you. Mom. Dad. My voice was so steady it did not feel like mine. You really should have read what I filed yesterday morning. 3 seconds of silence. The longest 3 seconds that living room had ever held. What did you file? My mother's voice had gone thin. I opened my purse and pulled out 2 cream-colored envelopes. Crisp, sealed, official. I placed the first one on the table. This is an emergency protective order signed this morning by a judge at the county courthouse. It prohibits both of you from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of me. Effective immediately. I placed the second envelope beside it. And this is a formal complaint filed with Adult Protective Services documenting a years-long pattern of coercive control, emotional manipulation, and isolation. 3 documents on a white tablecloth. 2 of theirs. 2 of mine. The room did not breathe. Then my mother's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A notification from the county court system. Then my father's phone in his back pocket vibrated against the doorframe. And from outside, no longer faint, no longer maybe, came the sound of a siren. Getting closer. Then stopping. Right in front of the house. Stay exactly where you are. Because what happened in the next 10 minutes is the part one still cannot believe I was actually strong enough to see through. Part 4 is here, and it is the part that changed everything. My mother grabbed her phone off the kitchen counter. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to try her passcode twice. I watched her face as she read the court notification. Her name, my name, the order number, the terms. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. What is this? What did you do? My father pulled his phone from his back pocket. Same notification. He read it the way he read everything in his life, slowly, lips slightly moving. And I saw something I had never once seen on Howard Bennett's face before. Fear. Vince Holbrook was already on his feet. I haven't signed anything. I'm not part of whatever this is. I need to leave. For the first time all night the flat, transactional voice had a crack running right through the middle of it. He wasn't worried about the wedding anymore. He was worried about himself. Ray saw his opening. The moment Howard stepped away from the door to look at his phone, Ray moved quickly for a 62-year-old man in a suit that didn't quite fit. He had the front door open and was through it before anyone could react. Blue and red lights pulsed through the open doorway, washing across the white tablecloth, the flowers, the contract, my mother's face, all of it painted in alternating color. A patrol car sat at the curb with the engine running. I could hear Ray's voice outside, rapid, speaking to someone on the porch. Then footsteps. My mother looked at me, and it was not anger yet. That would come later. Right now her face held something I had never seen from her before. Disbelief. The expression of someone whose script has been completely flipped, who wrote every single line of the play and suddenly does not recognize the scene she is standing in. Clara. Her voice cracked right down the middle. You called the police on your own parents? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The knock on the front door answered for me. The officer at the door was a woman. Late 30s, dark hair pulled back, calm eyes that took in the entire room in about 2 seconds flat. Good evening. I'm Officer Reeves with the County Sheriff's Department. We received notification that an emergency protective order is active at this address. She wasn't loud. She didn't need to be. I stepped forward. I'm Clara Bennett. I'm the petitioner on the protective order. I was invited here under false pretenses and was physically prevented from leaving. Officer Reeves looked past me. The tablecloth, the candles, the marriage contract still sitting on the table, the 2 envelopes. Her eyes moved to Howard, who was standing 3 feet from the open door, arms now at his sides. Sir, did you prevent anyone from leaving this residence tonight? This is my house, Howard said. That is not the question I asked. Ray's voice came from the porch behind her. Rapid, urgent. Officer, I was also prevented from leaving. I'm a licensed officiant. I was brought here on the representation that both parties had consented to this ceremony. That is clearly not the case. Officer Reeves nodded once and stepped inside. A second officer appeared in the doorway behind her, younger, staying near the entrance. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, I am going to need to speak with each of you separately. Sir, if you could step outside with my partner. Howard looked at the officer. Then at my mother. Then, for one long, held moment, at me. And he walked out the front door without a single word. His footsteps on the porch were heavy and slow. It was the first time in my entire life I had watched my father leave a doorway because someone else told him to. Officer Reeves turned to me and her voice dropped, not to a whisper, but to something gentler. Professional warmth. You're safe now. Is there anything else you need? I shook my head. Just this. Just to be believed. In Millhaven, a police car on your street is a headline. A police car in your driveway with the lights still running is the front page. Mrs. Perkins from next door was already on her porch, arms folded over her housecoat, phone in hand, not even trying to pretend she wasn't watching every second of it. Across the street, the florist's front light came on. A curtain twitched at the Riley house on the corner. My mother saw it. She was standing at the living room window with the blinds still half open from when Ray had pushed through the door. The blue and red lights painted her face in alternating color. Her jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles in her neck working. Are you happy now? She turned to me, voice low and venomous. You have destroyed this family. The whole street is watching. I didn't destroy anything, Mom. I just let people see what you were already doing. She flinched. An actual, physical flinch, like the words had real weight and had landed somewhere she hadn't armored. Outside, the second officer was speaking with Vince, who had attempted to leave through the back door. I could see him through the kitchen window, standing beside his truck with his arms spread wide in, and I had nothing to do with this gesture. Mr. Bennett contacted me. I came as a courtesy. He was throwing my father under the bus in real time. 40 minutes of partnership dissolved in 30 seconds of self-preservation. I actually had to look away. Officer Reeves was taking notes at the dining table. She had placed the marriage contract into an evidence bag. It sat on the white tablecloth looking strangely formal, like a patient on a stretcher waiting to be taken somewhere. My mother whispered from the window, not to me, not to anyone really. Just to the dark outside the glass. Everyone will know. The whole town. Yes, I said. They will. And for the first time in your life, you will not be the one controlling the story. Ray gave his statement on the front porch under the yellow glow of the light my mother always kept on to look welcoming to visitors. He handed Officer Reeves his phone showing the full email chain from Patricia. Date, time, payment confirmation. She had sent him $250 through a mobile payment app. The subject line read Friday ceremony, Bennett and Holbrook. She told me both parties were eager, Ray said. His voice was unsteady. She said her daughter was shy but happy. That this was a lovely family celebration. Officer Reeves documented everything. The email timestamps, the marriage contract now sealed in plastic, Ray's account of the evening, who sat where, what was said, the moment he tried to leave and was physically prevented from doing so. Then she turned to me. Miss Bennett, I have the protective order number on file. Your parents will be formally notified that all contact with you is prohibited within the terms of the order. I handed her a printed copy of the protective order from my purse, then the Adult Protective Services case number written on a sticky note in Jamie's handwriting. Then I told her about the voice recording on my phone. I have been recording since I walked in tonight. Officer Reeves paused. Looked at me, not surprised exactly, more like recalibrating. That's admissible in Georgia. One-party consent state. I nodded. From the driveway, the second officer was formally noting Howard's unlawful restraint. Not an arrest, not that night, but a formal record. A paper trail with his name and the date and a written description of exactly what he had done. Ray turned to me before he left. His eyes were red at the rims. Ms. Bennett, I didn't know. I am truly sorry. I want you to know that. I believe you, I said. He walked to his car, started the engine, and pulled away slowly, like a man trying not to make any more noise in a night that had already been far too loud. I stood on the porch and watched his tail lights disappear. Officer Reeves told Howard he would be formally cited for unlawful restraint. A misdemeanor, no jail time that night, but a permanent entry in his record, visible in any future legal proceeding. I watched my father hear those words. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He stood on the front lawn under the old oak tree he had planted the year I was born, and something in his posture changed. The broad shoulders that had filled every doorway of my childhood seemed to narrow. The arms that had been folded like armor all night hung loose at his sides, purposeless. He looked at me through the open front door. Not angry, not pleading. Confused. Like he was looking at someone he did not quite recognize. I held his gaze. I did not look away. I did not give him the small apologetic nod he had been trained by 27 years to expect from me. Then I turned back inside. My mother was sitting at the dining table in the chair that had been set out for me during the ceremony. The candles had burned down, wax pooled on the white tablecloth. She was staring at the 2 envelopes I had placed there, the protective order and the APS complaint, like they were something alive. This is not over, Diana. I will get a lawyer. I will have that order vacated before Monday morning. Officer Reeves stepped back in. Ma'am, I would strongly recommend you do retain an attorney. For yourself. My mother looked at Officer Reeves. Then at me. Then at the empty chair where Vince had been sitting an hour ago. Adult Protective Services will be in contact within 5 business days, Officer Reeves added, writing something in her notepad. The investigation is already open. My mother opened her mouth. Closed it. For the first time in my entire life, Patricia Bennett did not have a prepared line. The silence was the loudest sound that house had ever held. And I had been standing in that house for 27 years. Vince Holbrook was released after giving his statement. Officer Reeves told him the same thing she had told my parents. He might receive a subpoena if the investigation continued. He didn't respond, didn't look at anyone. He simply climbed into his dark truck, started the engine, threw it into reverse, and backed down the driveway with the careful precision of a man who wanted to erase every single second he had spent on Marlowe Road. I stood on the porch and watched his tail lights shrink down the road until they disappeared past the curve by the old grain silos at the edge of town. That man had driven 40 minutes to this house. He had sat on that couch for over an hour. He had looked me in the eye and said, "I think you will find the terms very reasonable." He knew I had never seen him before. He knew I had not consented. And he stayed anyway. Tonight he drove home with nothing. Not the arrangement he had come to collect, not the $40,000 of leverage my father owed him, not even his dignity, because he had thrown Howard under the bus the moment the blue lights hit the driveway. The only people remaining were my parents, 2 officers, and me. Officer Reeves walked over. "Miss Bennett, you are free to go whenever you are ready. The order is in effect. If either parent contacts you or comes within 500 feet of you, call dispatch immediately." I thanked her and shook her hand. One of the officers, the younger one, murmured something to his partner as they walked back to the patrol car. I caught it just barely. First time I have seen anything like this in Millhaven. I picked up my purse from the dining table, walked past the white tablecloth and the melted candles and the empty chairs. $40,000. That was the number my parents had put on my life. I walked out the front door on my own terms. Do not go anywhere. Because the next 2 weeks, what my mother tried to do after that night, and what the APS investigation turned up, is the part of this story that finally set me free. Part 5 is right here. The drive home was 45 minutes of complete silence. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call Jamie. I didn't call Aunt Ruth. I just drove. Both hands on the wheel. Headlights cutting through the dark stretch of Route 9, where the streetlights thin out and it is just you and the pine trees and the dark. My hands started shaking somewhere around mile 7. They hadn't shaken all night. Not when my father blocked the door. Not when my mother cried. Not when I pulled out the envelopes. But now, alone in the car with no one to perform calm for, my body finally caught up with everything my mind had been holding down for hours. I thought about my mother. Not the woman who had set that trap tonight. The other one. The one who used to braid my hair so tightly it would last 3 days. Who made macaroni and cheese from scratch when I had the flu and sat on the edge of my bed until I fell asleep. Who kept every single one of my report cards in a shoebox on the top shelf of her closet. Then I thought about that same woman. Signing a contract with my name on it. Listing my bank account balance. Hiring an officiant. Choosing a stranger. Blocking the door. Both of those women are my mother. That is the part nobody tells you. The people who hurt you the worst are not strangers. They are the ones who know exactly where you are soft because they made you that way. I pulled into my parking spot at 9:20 that night. Turned off the engine and sat in the dark, listening to the tick of the cooling metal and the distant sound of a dog barking a few streets over. Then I went inside, locked the door, slid down the kitchen wall to the floor, and cried. Hard and ugly and loud, the way you can only cry when no one is watching and you do not have to be strong for anyone anymore. Jamie called at 11. You okay? I don't know. But I'm safe. I fell asleep on the kitchen floor that night. When I woke up Saturday morning, my phone showed 23 missed calls. 11 from my mother. I could chart her emotional arc just from the timestamps. 3 minutes apart at first, the angry phase. Then longer gaps. Then a cluster around 2 in the morning, the crying phase. 4 from my father. No voicemails. Classic Howard. Call, wait, hang up. Call again. Silence delivered in installments. 3 from relatives I barely spoke to, fishing for details. 2 from Aunt Ruth. I called her back first. You okay, baby? Tired. But okay. What are you hearing out there? Aunt Ruth exhaled. It is everywhere. Mrs. Perkins told her whole walking group before breakfast. By noon, every woman in Millhaven who owns a pair of sneakers knew there was a police car in your mama's driveway. Ah. I pressed my forehead against the cabinet and just breathed. One call from Vince Holbrook's number. No voicemail. Then the number was blocked from his end. He deleted it. 2 from numbers I didn't recognize. I returned none of them except Aunt Ruth's. Then a text from my mother arrived. Long, single-spaced, the kind of message she composed like a legal brief full of redirected blame. I read the first line. You have destroyed your father and me. I cannot show my face anywhere in this town. I hope you are satisfied with yourself. I took a screenshot, added it to the evidence folder on my phone, filed it the way Jamie had taught me. Date, time, content summary. It was automatic now. 3 years of practice paying forward in the most unexpected way. Aunt Ruth told me one more thing before she hung up. Your mother called your cousin Patricia this morning. Told her you have been psychologically influenced by outside parties. That is the story she is going with. I was not surprised. Patricia Bennett does not lose. She rewrites. But this time there were too many witnesses. An officer's report. A court order. A voice recording on my phone. The story had already been written and she had not held the pen. The call from Adult Protective Services came the following Wednesday. A caseworker named Ellen Moore, professional, warm, thorough. She told me the investigation was formally open based on my complaint and all supporting documentation. Miss Bennett, your file is one of the most detailed we have received. The timeline, the screenshots, the corroborating witness statements, the original notebook. It all matters enormously. She asked if I could bring the original notebook to her office. I told her I had submitted 42 photocopied pages with the protective order application, but I could bring the original in. That would be ideal, she said. She explained the process. Interviews with my parents, with neighbors, with anyone I had listed as having witnessed the pattern over the years. Howard and Patricia would be contacted by certified mail within 5 business days. What happens if they refuse to cooperate? Lack of cooperation is noted formally in the file. But it does not stop the investigation. Jamie sent me an update the same day. Howard's unlawful restraint citation had been fully processed. A misdemeanor, formally on record. No jail time, but a permanent document with his name, the date, and a written description of what he had done, visible in any future legal proceeding involving the family. Ray Dutton, the officiant, had voluntarily submitted a written statement to Adult Protective Services. Unprompted, without being asked. He detailed everything. The email from Patricia, the payment, the moment he understood I had not consented, the moment Howard blocked the door. He was cooperating fully and completely. Vince Holbrook. Silent. According to Aunt Ruth, he had told his father the arrangement was finished. No explanation, no argument, no negotiation. He just shut it down. The $40,000 debt still existed. Howard still owed the Holbrooks. But the currency he had tried to pay it with was permanently off the table. I hung up with Ellen Moore and sat at my kitchen table for a long time, just breathing, listening to Button walking across the counter and knocking a pen onto the floor and then looking at me with absolutely zero remorse. I picked it up and he knocked it off again. And in that completely ordinary silly moment, I felt a knot in my chest that had been pulled tight for a very long time. The system was working. Slowly, imperfectly, bureaucratically, with a lot of paperwork and certified mail. But working. 2 weeks after the dinner, a letter arrived at my apartment from my parents' attorney. A formal request to vacate the emergency protective order, claiming I had grossly exaggerated a routine family disagreement. I forwarded it to Jamie. She called me back and read it aloud in the tone she reserves for things that are both legally weak and personally insulting. This is harassment, Clara. And it just added another exhibit to your file. Keep it. 3 days later, my mother called the veterinary clinic and asked to speak with my manager. Dr. Langley told me about it during my lunch break, her face careful and kind. Your mother called this morning. She said, and I am quoting directly, "My daughter is emotionally unstable and should not be trusted with responsibilities." My stomach dropped. Dr. Langley put her hand on my arm. I told her that you are one of the most reliable people on my staff. And I told her that if she calls again, I will document it as workplace harassment. I thanked her. I do not think she knew how much that meant to me in that moment. My mother was running out of levers to pull. The walking group had quietly stopped including her. Neighbors who used to chat with her for 20 minutes in the driveway now made polite small talk and moved on. Millhaven is small enough that everyone knows, and polite enough that nobody says it directly to your face. But you can feel it. The way a room changes temperature when someone walks in. Then my father called. One short call. I didn't know it would go this far, he said. His voice was low and rough. You still blocked the door, Dad. Silence. Then the click of a disconnected line. I told Jamie about it that night over coffee at her kitchen table and she looked at me with her steady eyes and said, "He is not sorry for what he did. He is sorry it did not work." I wanted to argue. I couldn't. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. I have asked myself 100 times since that Friday night whether I did the right thing. Calling the police to my parents' house. Filing against my own family. There are moments, late at night usually when the apartment is quiet and Button is asleep on my feet, when I wonder if I was too harsh. If I should have just walked out and never looked back instead of bringing the law into it. But then I remember the deadbolt clicking behind me. The contract with my name typed into every blank. My father's back against the door. I renewed the protective order for 6 months. Then I sat at my kitchen table on a Sunday morning, opened my laptop, and wrote an email to both of them. Short, clear, no anger, no accusation, no theater. Just the truth. Mom, Dad. I love you. I want you to know that has not changed and I do not think it ever will. But I will not be in contact with either of you until 3 things happen. First, you complete a family counseling program with a licensed therapist. Second, you acknowledge out loud in your own words what happened on the night of October 11th. Not a version. Not a reframe. What actually happened. Third, you respect the boundaries I have set. Not because a court order requires it, but because you choose to. This is not punishment. This is what I need in order to feel safe. I hope you will do the work. I will understand if you don't. I read it twice. Hit send. My mother replied within 4 hours. A 4-page email, single-spaced. She blamed Aunt Ruth for poisoning me. She blamed modern culture for making daughters disrespectful. She blamed my job, my apartment, my independence. She blamed everything and everyone except the woman who had signed a marriage contract on behalf of her adult daughter. She never once used the words "I am sorry." My father didn't reply at all. I read my mother's email halfway through. Then I archived it. I didn't delete it. I might need it someday. But I did not finish reading it. There was nothing in those 4 pages I had not heard 1,000 times in 1,000 different configurations. A boundary is not a wall. It is a door with a lock, and the key is in their hands. They just have to be willing to pick it up. So far they have not reached for it. Aunt Ruth and I have a new tradition now. Every Sunday morning we meet at a diner halfway between our 2 towns, a place called Maples with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that is far too strong and pancakes the size of your head. She always gets there first. Always orders my coffee before I sit down. Black, 1 sugar. The way she taught me to drink it when I was 16. She said if you are going to be a woman in this family, you had better learn to like things that are a little bitter. She was not wrong. Last Sunday she told me about her own marriage. The one my mother always called the failure. She told me how her ex-husband used to open her mail, check her mileage, time her grocery trips. She told me how she stayed for 15 years because her older sister, my mother, kept telling her it was completely normal. I left when I was 43, Aunt Ruth said, stirring her coffee slowly. 15 years too late. She looked out the window for a moment. I recognized what your mother was doing to you because I lived inside a version of it for over a decade. I wanted to tell you sooner. I didn't know how. I reached across the table and held her hand. You are the first person in this family who ever told me I was allowed to say no. She squeezed back. Took me 15 years to learn that word for myself. I am glad you learned it at 27. Jamie showed up late the way she always does, slid into the booth, ordered her coffee, and pulled out her phone. APS finalized their report. The file is documented and archived. If anything escalates in the future, any contact violation, any new incident, it will all be referenced. I nodded and sipped my coffee and looked out at the parking lot where the Sunday morning light was hitting the puddles from the night before. For the first time in a very long time, Sunday felt like Sunday. I am not telling you this story so you will feel sorry for me. I do not need that. I am telling you because 3 years ago, sitting in a parking lot with shaking hands writing dates and quotes in a navy blue notebook, I wished with everything I had that someone had said what I am about to say to you right now. Setting a boundary is not betrayal. Protecting yourself from the people who raised you is not cruelty. Keeping a record of what is being done to you, writing it down, dating it, saving the screenshots, is not paranoia. It is preparation. You may never need it. But if you do, you will be so grateful it is there. My parents are not monsters. I need you to hear that clearly. They are people who grew up inside a system that taught them children are property, that obedience equals love, and that control equals safety. I understand where it comes from. But I can hold that understanding and still say it was wrong. Both of those things are completely true at exactly the same time. I love them. I love them from this side of the boundary line, where I can breathe, where I can choose, where nobody gets to sign my name on anything without my permission. The notebook is still in my nightstand drawer. I do not open it anymore. But I know it is there. And it reminds me every single day that I was not losing my mind. I was never losing my mind. I was just living inside something that was designed to make me doubt myself, and I wrote it all down until the doubt didn't have anywhere left to stand. My name is Clara Bennett. I am 27 years old. And on a Friday night in October, for the first time in my life, I walked out of my parents' house. Not because I was told to leave, but because I chose to go. That is the difference. That is everything. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the very end. If you have ever had to draw a line with someone you love, you already know how heavy it is. And how necessary.